Good morning, and thank you for joining me on this Facebook page, Yearning to Fill Gaps on the Maps of My Reality. This is the first Q&A session which we posted, and the questions you have posted on this page, as well as some other questions on Facebook, is what I would like to cover with you today. Why did I create this page, Yearning to Fill Gaps on Maps of My Reality? And how would I answer the questions? And what do we do next? That's how this discussion is going to progress. Why this yearning? The intention here is self development of myself, and helping others who join me on this journey to develop themselves. And what are we trying to develop? We're trying to develop systems thinking so that we are able to improve the systems we work under. Remember, a pharmaceutical quality management system is an ecological system. We work in it. It's a human system. And the interactions, the interrelationships, and the life cycle of a product and the different functions all have to come together. So, for example, if I look at quality by design and quality management system, so you have to go from development, technology transfer, validation, continued process verification, root cause investigations when you have deviations, effective corrective actions, preventive actions, and then continual improvement. How do you fill all those pieces together? We may be working in one job function and we don't have the big picture. So development means to have the big picture, to be effective and efficient in managing the interrelationships and interactions that occur between functions over time and between individuals, so that we are systems oriented. And systems orientation means that we have a clear idea of who the customer is, directly and indirectly, and clearly we have to keep the patient in mind. So how do we develop ourselves? Our education and training provides us analytical skills to a large extent, and we practice to be systematic. That gets us the first job. But to progress, you have to keep increasing your knowledge. You have to keep learning, acquiring new knowledge. But you also have to mature and as a leader. And that's what development is all about. Is can you deal with the uncertainty and complexity at the next higher level position that you aspire for? How would you prove yourself to give assurance to your peers, your management, that you can take increasing responsibility and advance your career? At the same time, I think the key here is that you have to leverage your experience. Your experience is practical contact with your job that you're doing, but also the feelings and emotions that you experience. Management of feelings and emotions is difficult, and some of us develop, but at different rates. Many do not. And we want to reduce that variance by learning to develop ourselves through our experience, especially by learning to manage our emotions and feelings in a way that they support our development and they are in the interest of others, especially patients. And remember, anybody who registers for a medical intervention is coded or labeled as a patient in the healthcare system. So in that sense, we all are patients at one time or the other. So how we think and what we feel must be aligned. There should not be any contradictions between the two. And when that occurs, our actions we take would be care informed, knowledgeable action. I mean, we talk about data, information, knowledge, wisdom. Wisdom is taking action based on knowledge and guided by care. So, care, knowledge, action is the sequence, and all three of them should be aligned, and there should not be any contradiction in our mind between any of those. So, how we think must be rational, scientific, and we must align how we feel, how we think, and how we act seamlessly. Change what we feel. How is the question? The answer is, as a door opener to begin a dialogue, dil se or by heart. So the picture here shows, I think we want to bring our heart and mind, our heart and brain together. So heart, brain, and guts have to be aligned. Guts is where we take action. So in that sense, my development need. What are my development needs? And I'll share with you an example. It is hard, very hard to be dil se all the time or by heart by all the time. There are occasions I can be dil se at a very high order of consciousness. We'll talk about that, and you'll have seen a lot of information on the yearnings page on the Facebook on orders of consciousness and other information. So I hope you have had a chance to review some of that information, because that is a resource that I have sort of collected for you, and that you can look over, look at the videos, read the articles at your convenience. And that's what your responsibility is if you want to develop yourself, or if you want to develop and join me in my journey to developing myself. So let me give you an example, very recent example. It happens many times. So this is not a unique example. I get such the request many, many times, and many, many people. So on July 18th, I received a message, a text message on LinkedIn. And there's a young chap. As soon as I received the message, I saw his profile and knew where he was working from his profile on LinkedIn, what was his education, and so forth. So immediately, I think I was a bit disappointed that he was using a vocabulary which is more like a WhatsApp vocabulary on LinkedIn, which I said, fine, no problem. So he says, "Hi, sir, good morning." I just simply quoted exactly, cut and paste what he shared with me. So I have not altered his words. So this is exactly how he communicated. I said, "Good morning. How are you, sir?" "I'm good." So since I knew his name, I didn't know the meaning of his name. I asked, "What does his first name mean?" Then he comes back, saying his name means that someone who wishes the best for everybody. I said, "Oh, cool." Then he goes on to say, ask questions such as, "Do you understand Hindi? Are you settled in the US?" And my ability to keep my order of consciousness high is, I'm losing it. I'm losing it. So I'm getting upset now. I said, I got so upset. I said, I disconnected. So I said, that's enough. 2 years later, he comes back. "How are you, sir? Can you help me get a job in production outside of India?" I'm still upset. No. He says, "Why, sir?" And when he says, "Why?" that's the right question to ask. And I soften a bit, but I still I'm upset. And I said, "You're not ready. You have to develop and mature. I'm providing you a link to a video. Use it to learn how to develop." And I provided a video, which is the video which is already available on your Yearning page, which is the recorded message to the IDMA NSF program that Murda Bhai had organized in Bangalore, and it was about quality management systems. So if you have not listened to that, please do listen to that. It's on the Yearnings page. The point here is this: when we get upset, when we get angry, and the same thing happens when we are afraid and when we are anxious and when we are tired, irritated, what happens is we react. Reaction is a reflex action. It is emotional. It is not rational often, and that comes out as a problem. And between stimulus and response and our response, there's a space. And if we take time, a few seconds to reflect and use that space before we respond, to think, then we have an opportunity to become rational. And we have an opportunity to care. And we have an opportunity to align our care, knowledge, and action. Action would be our response. So doing that consistently in difficult situations, in situations where we are afraid, when we are anxious, when we are concerned, or when we are angry, is very difficult. Development means you are able to do that in increasingly complex, increasingly difficult, increasingly uncertain environments, because that's what development is. So let's look at it. So learning space is the space between our stimulus and response. Through experience, through practice, we expand that space and we get better at using that space between the stimulus and response to act or to speak or to communicate in ways that are dil se or by heart. So, so here the discussion has progressed. Then he asked me a question: by only seeing the video, can I become a mature, or doing something, then I become mature? So I think that opened the door, and I have now a basis to talk to him to see if I can help him help himself. So I said it opens a door to start thinking, begin a reflection. He says, okay. Then I explained to him, consider, if you are the head of a company, will you respond to your own LinkedIn profile and how you are going about seeking a job? Will you select yourself and give yourself a job? So when you ask questions with meaningful questions, you trigger the thinking process. And if you're asking questions with carefully, so that your intention is to help this individual do better, your questions, if your intentions are clear, you are careful, therefore you will not invoke negative emotions. If you invoke negative emotions in your communications, the likelihood of that person being able to utilize their space, their learning space between their stimulus and response, is lower. So then I say, so he responds, and so my response to him was sufficiently careful so that he says, okay. And then he comes back in a day after, hi, sir, give me new ideas today. So you see the dialogue, the thing has changed to now we are on a path to being able to help each other. I can help him, he's helping me to help himself, and so forth. So this is really what I mean by Dilse, and this is by doing so, I have maintained a higher order of consciousness for myself, and by maintaining my higher order of consciousness, I'm helping him grow and develop, because for him he has to acquire a lot of new information, knowledge, and in the information age, um, you're not able to acquire knowledge is your choice, because the information that we need is all around us and it's free often. So that's really where I think I want to take this discussion to. So let me use question number one, which I received on Facebook Messenger. But this is what I get. How do I get a job? Very frequently. And today, my question to you is, why should I answer? And how should I answer? What should be my answer be? So if I'm asking those questions, if you are in a position that you are going to hire, ask those questions yourself. So in this individual, sir, I'm a fresher. I got second division in my MSc and BSc in organic chemistry. Can I get a job in QC or pharmaceuticals? I really need a job, but I have no reference in pharma industry. Now, this is a reflection, unfortunate reflection on the educational system that exists many places, and the lack of support for students by the academics and the faculty. And this has to change, but clearly we cannot change it today. So how do I help him today? So my answer to him really is this: what has happened has happened. You have a second grade, which is not the greatest grade that one can get, but if you believe you can do a job, you need to know how do you believe you can do a job, and why your grades in school or in it on a in a college do not reflect your ability or your belief to do that job. So you have to reflect upon your past to say, why do you believe you can do this job? Because a, getting a job is a contract. Nobody is going to hire a person if they believe they can't do the job. Well, I'm not talking about the some traditional ways of my relative or my. I'm not talking about those aspects. I'm just talking about pure merit-based job seeking and so forth. So the key here is for this individual to get a job. He should. There's definitely he should get a job. So there's nothing. Yes, the second division is not the greatest, but if you are able to say why that grade is what it is, and you're able to say, I can do better. I know why the grade was bad. Why did I screw up, or why did I not do well? But I know how to do well now. Then there is always the path open. So don't worry about that. But be sincere, do your homework, and know for yourself why you believe in yourself. Because to give somebody assurance, you have to be self assured. And in the information age, how to put a profile on LinkedIn, how to write a resume, what information is needed, what is the company about, what job are you seeking, and visualize how you will do the job, how would you do the interview, and do your homework and be sincere. And then when you communicate, your sincerity is your intentions, your clear intentions would be visible, and people will start believing you, because that's the way to think about. And the equation, if you want to keep a simple equation in your mind: care, knowledge, then action. Care, in this case, care for yourself, understand your strengths and weaknesses, care for the company and the job you're seeking. So do the homework to be knowledgeable about how to do things. How do you know what you should know, and how do you know what you know? You should be very clear. And then once you have that care, knowledge, then you can act. Your actions can be your resume, actions can be your LinkedIn profile, actions can be your job application, your interview, and everything else. So that's really the basis for answering this question. Question 2 on Facebook. Sir, which is the best area to start a career in pharmaceutical industry? I believe it would be industry. DRA, Drug Regulatory Affairs, Production, QA, or QC? My response on the Facebook to this individual was better to start in a lab or production so that you start at in a situation where your education and training comes in handy to get your confidence and to start using that experience to develop yourself so that you're able to integrate multidisciplinary multifunctional information into knowledge, and that is necessary to be a wise regulator and assurance provider. I know there are many programs, academic programs, that give degrees and certificates in regulatory affairs. My sense is, I think, to a large extent, much of the industry is check the box. They look at a guideline, they look at a regulation and check the box and so forth. That's the minimal requirement. Where I see the future going is much of those jobs will not exist because we are dealing in complex. You have to be competitive in this market in the few years. You need to be responsible for quality, not to rely on the regulators or the GMP inspection to improve quality or to receive FDA comments and complete response letters to improve your application. So that's the reason why I believe acquiring the technical expertise in your area and then developing yourselves to grow, to understand the interrelationships and interactions between different functions over time, between R&D and manufacturing, between company and regulatory agencies, I think is a step-by-step process. So those who become true leaders and with that experience would be better at the QA uh, and regulatory affairs functions. QC would be a good job to start. Production would be a good job to start. R&D laboratory would be a good place to start for people who are technically oriented and who are technically trained. Most of us are technically trained. That's my advice. Question 3. Ravi Kumar asked the question, "Hi sir, I'm a pharmacist too, and working as a process engineer, mainly solid oral solid dosage forms. I'm quite interested about the recent talks on continuous manufacturing, along with the role that extrusion machines are going to play in it. Even though I try to keep my interest growing, but at times feel distracted and confused about the career. I did my Master of Pharmacy in Pharmaceutical Chemistry, natural product thesis. Should I go for PhD and take a project related to continuous manufacturing, and whether it is feasible in the first place?" Well, let me start with the last part, whether it's feasible in the first place. I think there are the picture I have chosen here is at the University of Rutgers. This is one of the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Technology and Education schools, and you see faculty from different schools: Steve Schwendeman, Raj Suri, Mike Pikal passed away, talking to Professor Muzio. In our National Institute in the US, the major program which has continuous manufacturing is the Rutgers program. Now, there are very few programs, mature programs, that provide PhD degrees to. I don't know any in India, so I can't answer. So clearly, you'll have to, if you want to pursue PhD in continuous manufacturing, you'll have to go to US UK and Austria have very good programs. So you'll have to go outside. So, but the question really is, why would you want to? Always ask the question why first, then how, and then what. So we answered the what right now. So Ravi, you're struggling with uh, being distracted and confused about the career. So why? Why are you feeling distracted and confused about the career is the first question you should be asking. Because how you answer that why will then determine how you pursue um, what you need to do next in your career. And then the what is whether you do a PhD in continuous manufacturing, you PhD in something else, or you don't do a PhD. So you don't need to have PhD. So I think those, why are you distracted? Why are you um, 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 confused? I think I don't know the answer. That's the question you have to answer for yourself. And I'll be glad to talk to you later on about what your reflection on why you are in the state you come to some conclusion on. I think perhaps it will be helpful if I can share with you some information about why continuous manufacturing is becoming a buzzword, becoming so popular. So there are many forces in play right now. One is um, in the US, continuous manufacturing is part of the new law, which was signed by President Obama on December 2013, is part of the 21st Century Cures Act, where FDA is mandated to support research in continuous manufacturing and process analytical technology, process control technology. Why is that? If you recall, when I was at FDA in the year 2000, and I started working on PAT and Quality by Design initiatives, and I think when we launched the PAT initiative and pharmaceutical quality for 21st century initiative, the reason for that was, especially for solid oral dosage forms, uh, the pharmaceutical processing, the solid dosage form processing is a physical process. There's had no chemistry happening. Chemistry has ended. If chemistry was happening, then the product would be have stability problems. So it's a physical process where we blend, we granulate, we dry, we compress, we coat, and we package. So these are all physical processes, and our raw materials that we purchase, excipients, API, we purchase on the basis of certificate of analysis, which are predominantly dealing with identity, purity, and impurity profiles based on compendia. Now, in a physical process such as blending, granulation, and etc., uh, particle size, moisture content, size, shape, charge, electric charges, all those physical attributes are important. Many of those attributes are not part of our certificate of um, uh, uh, analysis for the materials we purchase, and we don't. So there's a lot of variability. And then in to get the application approved quickly and to get to manufacturing quickly, our development model has been is we develop to fix in time. What I mean by that, we quickly try to identify what is the time for mixing. So we say mixing for 10 minutes. And since we don't do many experiments, we don't know what the range variance is, and we don't know what the variation will be in the future supply of our raw materials. And so we have fixed manufacturing processes, variable input. So what happens is we have variable output. And that was the reason for the process analytical technology initiative. so that we can have online controls. We can utilize spectroscopy, near infrared, Raman, which the spectra has both information about the chemical identity as well as physical attributes, not necessarily in an absolute sense, but in a relative sense, which is sufficient for the control strategy. So you can use near infrared or Raman type of technologies to identify, but also have a measure of a relative measure of the physical attributes that can be related to the manufacturing process performance, so that it becomes easier to control the manufacturing process without relying on the end product testing. And our end product testing, the other mistake we do is that we use the compendial methods, which were never designed for release tests. They are acceptance criteria for a market, they're market standards, and we use them for batch release tests. And if you go back and look at some of the FDA presentations, including Dr. Woodcock at the Science Board meeting in the year 2002, this point has been raised again and again that if you want to be in a continuous improvement, you have to be better than the compendial standards, and you cannot use the zero tolerance criteria as your end product specification. So you need to have alternate release criteria, and most companies don't do that. And even many of the Office of Generic Drug Reviewers don't understand that yet. And this is such an old um, issue that it's unfortunate that our order of consciousness is not increasing in the sector. So the reason now FDA is pushing for continuous manufacturing is what happened with the from Ranbaxy to the massive numbers of data integrity breaches in assurance of data integrity in India and China. And the FDA inspectors were not able to identify it. So the breaches in data integrity that were detected in the year 2013-14 had been going on for years. That had become a practice in most companies. And the inspectors could not even identify that for 10 years. And that doesn't mean those. So now the challenge is, I think the trust has been lost. So continuous manufacturing does two things. It provides higher assurance of quality because it reduces human error, takes the human out of the picture to a large extent. And the other thing is it with a smaller footprint and a smaller, more efficient, you can bring manufacturing back to US. So in the current political polarization, make in India, make in USA, make in Germany. So we are becoming more nationalistic. So and the situation is serious. And I really think the global supply chain has many weaknesses. And going forward, it will the tendency will be is the competition between US, China will be so great, the focus will be on national manufacturing, local manufacturing. So, but that will take some time. But that means continuous manufacturing, process analytical technology are established. So if you don't have the education training in these areas, acquiring that education and training through either a doctoral program or other means is absolutely recommended. So, but then I think you have to understand where you're coming from, but you need to know why you're feeling confused about your career, distracted about your career. Um, it's only you who can answer that. But take this background information and hopefully answer that why, and perhaps we can connect later on to discuss a bit more on how you would progress and what you should be doing. All right. I hope that was sufficiently detailed answer that provides some useful background information to you. Question 4. Mehtab asked me a question. So very kindly, she said, first of all, I would like to thank you very much for this kind and high-level Q&A session, Q&A session opportunity. Well, you're welcome. My question is about how Industry 5 concept, not 4, will affect first human beings' order of consciousness and our industry. Thanks in advance. Well, it's a very thoughtful question. So let me just share with you what's Industry 5. Now, Industry 4 is moving towards automation with essentially based on internet, so that you will have a chip in every machine, everything, so that everything is on the internet. So a full automation with Internet of Things, where the machines communicate directly and so forth. That's where much of the industry is going. Pharma is perhaps 30 years behind semiconductor or other industries. So pharma is step by step moving into Industry 4. I think the continuous manufacturing approvals that have occurred for companies like Vertex, Eli Lilly, Johnson and Johnson are the few initial examples, but there is significant movement in that direction. And given the political and other security challenges, it's going to happen very, very quickly, especially for the brand drugs. And that raises the question, what about the generics, and whether we will have two different levels of assurance, and that's a social dilemma that I think we will talk about some other time. That's where Industry 4 is. But Industry 5, which is what Mehtab's question is Industry 5 is already on the horizon, not in pharma, but it's all, which according to some visionaries will bring an increased human touch back to manufacturing. What does that mean? It is increased collaboration between humans and smart systems. Much of that will happen in 4 also, but in a way, in Industry 4, it will be more like a technology, how we use technology. Industry 5 opens up an interesting question about collaboration with an artificial intelligence. And that's the reason I chose this picture to illustrate a artificial intelligent person or is walking around with the individuals. So it's an interesting question, and the way I would like to answer that question really is care. If we can't care for our patients, ourselves, how would we care for a intelligent machine who is going to be who perhaps could not only understand our emotions and feelings, but would be so rational, like the in Star Trek Data is a wonderful example. I think we have to have an order of consciousness high enough and maintain it high enough that we even treat an intelligent robot like what occurred in the movie or the television series Star Trek with Data, the robot. Treat them as humans, as equal partners, and that takes us maintaining a higher order of consciousness. Remember, human beings, just in many parts of the world today, we still have slavery. We still have women don't have the same rights, and in America also, it has been only less than about 100. I don't know. With the Civil War ending, it has been only a century or so since we abolished slavery. So the order of consciousness of humans across the world is very low, and only those individuals who maintain a higher order of consciousness, who can who can even consider a intelligent robot as a collaborator will succeed. So developing ourselves to increase our order of consciousness is a key and essential need for success or survival to that extent. So if I go back and just read what Mehta asked, um, uh, my question is about Industry 5 concept will affect first human beings' orders of consciousness. So, Mehtab, I think we will have to maintain a order of consciousness, which I think which is between 4 and 5, according to Professor Keegan's orders of consciousness scale, between being self-authored and self-transforming. Uh, order of consciousness number 5 is self-transforming. Order 4 is being self-authored, and order 3 is being socialized mind, and I think robots, to be intelligent robots like this, they would be certainly much higher than us. So we have to maintain a higher order of consciousness. So those of you who are not familiar with orders of consciousness, I think there are several videos on the Yearning page, especially one with Professor Keegan. Please listen to it. There's also other videos and other information on the Yearnings page about orders of consciousness. Please review it, and perhaps we can ask other questions related to that in the second session. So thank you for the questions. What do I do next, or what do you do next, I think is the key. Um, I think this is just the beginning. I'll keep posting a lot of information which I think would be useful for you. In this information age, you not acquiring knowledge, information and knowledge is your choice. There's nobody else can help you on that. So if you're able to choose to learn, continue to learn, choose to develop yourself, I think the Yearnings page, my lot of postings on LinkedIn and Facebook are simply a means to get some pointers, but you have to do your own learning. You have to do your own homework. But I'm here to answer any questions like we have done now, and I'll be glad to maintain a regular Q&A sessions, perhaps once, twice a month, or whatever frequency might be appropriate. But you have to visit, interact on the website, the Yearnings page, or my Facebook, on my LinkedIn. You have to take the initiative to care for yourself, to know what knowledge you need, to acquire what knowledge you need, and then to be active in efforts to gather your experience in practical contact with the information available all over, managing your emotions, managing your feelings in a way that you create and expand your learning space, which is between your stimulus and response. And you only do that when you do it by heart. They'll say. Thank you for listening.